Yo, man. Are you there listening to me? Here I am, guys. Here I am, whoever you are. I'm watching my video. Here I am. I'm out here again. I'm gonna make another long ass video. The topic of this video though, guys, is going to be about fucking dead before born. Dead before born. This is like such an interesting video, guys. This video is gonna be about think about before you were born. You're pretty much dead, weren't you? This is like such a conundrum to me that I could not even I was actually thinking about this a lot before. But the topic of this video, guys, is going to be about dead before born. Think about before you were born, guys. How should I angle myself? You got the hill in the back. I like coming to this specific location to make these videos, man. It fucking feels fantastic. I hate like being stuck in all day, guys. If you're whoever you are, if you're watching this video, definitely, guys, you got to get out and get your fresh air, get some fresh air and all that. But anyway, guys, the topic of this video, man, dead before born. What the fuck do I mean by dead before born? It's such an interesting this is gonna be an interesting topic and concept to talk about. Basically, think about before you were born, before you came out of your mother's womb, your mother's meat flaps, before you came out. Damn, did you hear that? It's funny, isn't it? Think about before you were born. You were more or less not alive, right? We actually experienced death 2 times, right? Before we were born, and then after we live our life, and then we turn old, and then we respond, and we decompose in the ground. We actually, a lot of people don't really even think about this. You've already experienced death. We actually, I honestly do think so. We die 2 times. We already experienced death twice. We experience death 2 times, before we're born and after we live, and then we turn old and die and respire. So we experience death in 2 different types of ways. And if you think about it like that, guys, dead before born, think about before you came out of your mother's meat flaps, your mother's womb, your mother's belly, her tummy. You were pretty much not alive, guys. You were pretty much just a fucking... Before you came out of your mother's meat flaps, you were pretty much a fucking nothing, right? We were not even like conscious before we start to form in our mother's womb. So that's why I actually honestly do believe so, guys, that we as human beings, we experience death actually 2 times, before we're born and then after we live our lives, and then we turn old and respire and decompose in the ground. So we actually experience death twice, not just 1 time. Some people think that you die only after you live your life and then you turn old and respire and decompose into the ground. Actually, I do think so, guys, that we actually experience death twice, right before we're born and then after we turn old and then we respire. So if you think this is like such a tricky concept, man, the wind is fucking howling, man. I swear the wind's fucking getting so loud. We experience death 2 times, guys, not just only once. This is such a fascinating topic, dead before born. Guys, a lot of us, we think that you basically you live your life, then you turn old, then that's when you experience death. Actually, guys, fucking actually, think about it. Before you were born, you lacked all forms of like self-awareness and consciousness and conscientiousness and whatever. Basically, before you were born, you weren't even fucking alive. Before you were born, before you start to develop in your mother's womb, you were not even like, you had 0 like self-awareness, basically. So basically that means that you were not even basically alive. Before you were born, you were not alive. So I think that's why like we actually experience death 2 times in our lives. Actually, I think so. I think we actually experience death 2 times. We experience death right before we're born and right after we turn old and respire and decompose into the ground. So actually, I do think so, guys, that we experience death twice, not just only a singular time, not just only like 1 time. I think we actually experience death 2 times, guys, before you're born and after you turn old and respire. But anyway, dead before you're born. Really carefully think about this. It's such a weird conundrum that before we were born, we were basically when we weren't even alive, we weren't even in existence, right? Then you start to develop out of your in your mother's womb, and you start to come out of her meat flaps, and then you start to get born. That's so bizarre. Think about before you were born, you were basically not even alive or in our reality, in this existence, in our world. That's so fucking bizarre to me, guys. Dead before born. Think about that. Before you were born, you were pretty much not alive. You were pretty much just you were pretty much fucking nothing. You were like not even sentient. You weren't even aware of anything. You were just like you're pretty much just like a fucking bunch of cells. You weren't even like, you had no brain or a nervous system, so you weren't even basically alive when you were developing in your mother's womb, before you start to come out of your mother's womb. That's so interesting that, you know, our consciousness, our consciousness came exactly inside after we start to come out of our mother's womb. That's when we started to get our consciousness. I wonder if like actually do think so. I wonder if anyone actually has any types of memories, any types of memories before they were born. I wonder if anyone has any types of any type of memory prior to their birth, any type of memory like that. I wonder, actually, that's like a very interesting topic. It's fucking howling, man, the wind in it. I wonder if there's any specific person that actually has some type of memory, like when they were like 1 or when they just came out of their mother's womb. I think that we actually turn conscious when we're actually 3 or 4 years old. I think that when you're like very, very, very little, like a tiny baby that just came out of your mother's womb, I think that your brain's not even really that advanced, so you're not even going to hold any memories properly. So I think, anyway, but it's very fascinating to me, guys. Dead before born. We actually, guys, if you think about it, we experience death 2 times, before we're born and after we turn old and respire and decompose into the ground. It's so bizarre, because a lot of us, we see death as being the end, that we get born and then we die and that's it. But how did we get in? Why did we become alive to begin with? Why? Because before you were born, you were pretty much not even alive. So that was that you were basically dead already, and then you came alive. Isn't that kind of weird? You were already dead, and then you came to life, and then you're gonna die again. And it's so bizarre to me. Like, how come something, our consciousness, emerged from nothing? Like death, we were pretty much in the void, and then we came into reality. We came out of our mother's wombs, and then now we're alive and stuff. It's such a bizarre thing, guys. It's so bizarre. I can't even possibly piece this together properly, guys. How the fuck did we develop fucking from like cells and stuff and then become conscious and aware? We were basically already dead. So if you think about it like that, it actually is very true that we experience death 2 times, not only once. Some people think that we just turn old. We fucking we just go through life and then we turn fucking super old. Then we fucking die, and that's when death hits you. Actually, guys, before you were born, you were pretty much not alive. We already experienced death already, guys. Before our birth, you were pretty much like not even alive or conscious or any of that before you were born, basically. So we already experienced death twice, actually. It's not only like only after we turn old and then we get into the ground and we start to decompose. We actually experienced death 2 times, right before we were born and right after we turn old and then we die. But it's so bizarre. Think about it. Dead before born. Before you were born, you were pretty much dead. You weren't even fucking conscious or aware or any of that. Your brain wasn't even here. You're fucking not even in a part of this reality. So you're pretty much fucking dead before born. That's the topic of this video, guys. Think about that so intimately and carefully, guys. Before you were born, you were pretty much not even fucking alive, were you? You were like fucking, your brain wasn't even operating or any of that. You were like, you had no sense of self-awareness or any of that stuff. It's so interesting to me that we start to become aware. We like, our consciousness came through the void and we start to become alive. It's so bizarre. There's no way you can fucking rationalize it. There's no way you can even try and attempt to rationalize it. That we came out of the fucking void, out of your mother's meat flaps, and start to become a little bit more aware. It's so difficult to fucking to try and rationalize it. It's so like, it's a big fat conundrum to me. Honestly, how can you possibly attempt to like come to terms with it and stuff and rationalize it? That dead before born. Before we were born, we were pretty much not even alive. And then we start to develop our consciousness, and then we start to come through our mother's womb, and then we start to like become alive. It's so weird. Dead before born. Think about it. Before you were born, you were pretty much already dead. You weren't alive. That's such a fat fucking it's so paradoxical to me that we emerged from dead. We came out of the void, basically. Isn't that kind of weird? Before you were born, think about it so carefully, guys. Before you were born, you were pretty much fucking in the ether, in the void, and then you start to come through your mother's meat flaps, and now you're very much alive and well and moving around our world, and you're breathing and you're eating and shitting and pissing. But you gotta think about it, guys. Before you were born, you were pretty much not alive. You were pretty much already dead. You already experienced death then. That's why I'm not too scared about dying. I think it's pretty much it's just gonna be like an endless cycle. Either there's gonna be some type of afterlife, or we're just gonna get born again. Because think about it, we already died. You already, if you're watching my videos, we already experienced death already. Think about that. Before you were born, you were pretty much not even conscious, aware of anything. You were pretty much not even alive. We were already fucking dead to begin with, and then we start to come to life, and now we're here. It's so bizarre to me, guys. It's so, think about that, man. It's so fucking bizarre that we were able to like develop from fucking nothing, come into existence, come through our mother's meat flaps, and we have developed a self-awareness, a consciousness. That is so fucking weird to me, man. It's so bizarre. I wonder how that's even fucking possible, man. Wonder how that's even possible. That we fucking came from fucking nothing, man. We came from fucking nothing in it. And then we start to become a little bit more self-aware. We start to become a little bit more self-aware and all that. It's so bizarre, you can't even fucking explain it. It's so difficult to fucking try and rationalize this, guys. Before you were born, you were pretty much not even alive. You were pretty much dead. And then we start to come through our mother's womb, and then we start to develop a consciousness and an awareness and all that. Then we start to become alive, and now we're here as self-existing in this planet. Where did it all? Why did we develop a consciousness to begin with? Why did we, when we were born, why did our consciousness start to form? And now we're alive, and now you have all these feelings and emotions and all that type of stuff. Where did it all fucking come from, guys? Why did it all start off? It's so weird. Once you start to think about it, it's such a bizarre thing that we were born and then we start to develop our consciousness, and then here we are now. Well, why did this all begin? Where did it all come from and all that type of stuff, man? Why did we become a little bit more conscious and aware and all that? Fucking hell, man. The wind is gonna fucking, the wind is fucking howling, man. Dead before born. This is such a fucking interesting topic, guys. It really is. We actually don't experience, a lot of you probably think that we only die once in our lives. Like when we get super old, then we go into the ground, that's when we die. Actually, we experienced death 2 times, guys, already. Right before you were born, you were pretty much not conscious, not aware. You were pretty much dead. So we actually experienced death 2 times, right before we're born and then after we turn old and then die. Very, very fucking fascinating indeed. Dead before born. Really, really carefully contemplate on this. Before you were born, you were pretty much fucking in the ether, in the void. You had no self-awareness, you had no like cognitive thought processes, you weren't thinking or conceptualizing, your brain wasn't even working at all, your nervous system wasn't even developed yet, so you were pretty much dead. You weren't alive. Like, how do we determine whether or not someone has died? Is when their brain activity ceases, right? That's when someone is pretty much dead. Before you were born, you had fucking no brain activity, so you were pretty much already dead, and then you came alive, then you're gonna die again, and it's gonna be a fucking endless fucking cycle, man. It's almost probably will become like an endless cycle, wouldn't it? Dead before born. Think about it. Before you were born, your consciousness and all that, your nervous system wasn't even developed, so you weren't alive basically, and so you were pretty much in the void, in the ether. And then you start to become aware and stuff like that. Start to develop a consciousness, and then now we're fucking here on planet Earth and all that type of stuff, and now we have a fucking consciousness and an awareness and all that. They do. Yeah. It's so fascinating, guys, to me. Dead before born. A lot of us, we think that you only die basically after you turn super fucking old, and then you go into the grave and that's when you die. Actually, guys, you experienced death 2 times, guys, 2 times in your life. Before you're born, and then obviously after you turn old, and then you fucking go into the ground. That's when you die. You actually die. We actually experience death twice, not just only one singular time. So fascinating. Dead before born. Think about it. Before you were born, you had no nervous system, no consciousness, your brain wasn't operating in it or any of that. You were pretty much not fucking alive basically, right? Dead before born. Before you were born, you were not even alive. You were pretty much in the grave. No consciousness, no self-awareness. You were already fucking, you were pretty much not even in this reality, in this existence or whatever. That's why honestly I don't really fear death at all. I think death is kind of like a, it's sort of just like, we're just going to go back to where it all began basically. Right before you were born, you were already pretty much dead. And so that's why death should not be something that's very frightening, because it's something that we already experienced to begin with. Like right before you were born, you were pretty much dead already. Do you have any recollection of of what it was like before you were born, before you had like any type of conscious experience before. Obviously now it was just like you were just there was like nothingness. You had no feelings, no trouble. You weren't happy, but you weren't sad. There was no suffering, even though you weren't able to experience anything, but you still weren't suffering or any of that. It's kind of like that. This is kind of have like that type of peacefulness to it. Death is probably like going to bring you a lot of peace and calmness. A lot of people in this world, they're very, very fearful of death, but I don't think you should be fearful of death at all, because we all already were not, we already experienced death. Actually, again, guys, you died 2 times. We experienced death twice in our lives, right before we're born and then right afterwards when we turn super fucking old and we go into the grave. So we experienced death 2 times in our lives. It's not only just, oh, you turn super old and then you go into the grave. Actually, guys, before you're born, you're pretty much not alive, so you already had that type of experience with death, and you're going to experience death again. Obviously, as time goes on, we're all going to turn fucking old, and then we're going to go into the grave. Death is such a fucking... it's like a very common thing that I talk about on my YouTube channel, death, because it's such an important topic. Every single human being alive, doesn't matter what you are and what your ethnic background is, who you are, you're going to fucking die as time goes on. As time marches on, you're going to fucking die in the end. So it's like something that you must come to terms with. And honestly, I think it's not something to be fearful of, because we already died to begin with. Like before you were born, you were pretty much not alive. Your consciousness hasn't formed. You weren't, your nervous system hasn't formed. You weren't able to think of anything. Right? Your brain activity hasn't begun yet before you were born. Like, how do we determine when someone's fucking dead? It's like when their brain activity ceases and all of that. And obviously, like before you're born, your brain activity is not operating at all. You have 0 brain activity before you're born. So you're pretty much, before you're born, you're already dead to begin with. So, and then you come alive, and then you're gonna die again. It's just not something to be fearful of, guys, at all. Don't be worried about death, because you already have some experience with death before you were born. You were pretty much already dead. So I feel like death is like we're gonna just return to that same starting point, basically, like right before you're born. That's like you're pretty much dead, aren't you? Your brain hasn't functioned. That's so bizarre. We just come into reality so spontaneously. Like you are not in it's so. I wonder if anyone has any type of like proper recollection of any of this. Think about like before you were born. Think about before you were born and stuff like that. You had like fucking 0 memories. Think about before you were born. I wonder if anyone has like any type of like recollection, like exactly when their consciousness started to form. That's so interesting, man. I wonder if anyone has some type of I wonder if anyone has like a proper like a recollection of like exactly when their consciousness started to form, right before they were born. Exactly when you start to become conscious. It's kind of bizarre. I wonder if anyone has like memories of being inside their mother's womb. That's so bizarre. It's so fucking bizarre. Such a fascinating topic though. Dead before born. Topic of this video, guys, is dead before born. Don't be fearful of death, guys. You were already not alive to begin with. Think about it. Before you were born, you had 0 brain activity going on. You didn't have any type of conscious experience before you were born. So death is not even something to be fearful of, guys. It's something that we're just going to return to a state, to that same old starting point again, guys. Right when we turn super fucking old and go into the grave, we're just going to go back to that starting point, and it's going to be the same thing again. So death it's not something that you should be even worried about at all. Death is like we're just going to return to that starting point again. We're just going to return to the same starting point again, man. It's not something to be scared of or anything like that. Death is just the start. We're just going to go back to that state of mind when we're not even aware of anything, and we're just going to be at some type of like peace. We're going to have like this great peacefulness in us. We're not going to be aware. We're not going to be having any type of like worries or doubts or any of that. We're just going to be aware, peaceful, and it's pretty much that's about it. You know, that's why death. Typically people when we get into these conversations about death and dying, a lot of us, we get fucking worried about it. But still, if you think about it, before you were born, you were pretty much not even alive to begin with. So we're just going to go back to that starting point. So it's not even something to be fearful of at all. I think honestly, guys, it's something that it's just like going back to that starting point before we were born. We're just gonna like feel that numbness and that calmness, and it's fucking amazing, guys. Dead before born, that's the fucking topic of this video, guys. Think about it. We actually experienced death 2 times, right before we're born and right after we turn super fucking old and go into the grave. So we have 2 experiences with death already, guys. You already experienced death. We all already have some type of experience with death, because think about before you were born, you were not aware of anything. You had no brain activity going on, so you were pretty much in the ground, decomposing. I mean, not actually, that's gonna happen afterwards. I mean, you were in you like before you were born, you weren't even alive. You had no conscious recollections or anything like that. You had no conscious experience. So basically you were already dead, and then you came alive, and then we're gonna die again, and then it's probably gonna be like a cycle and stuff. It's kind of very magical if you think about it, how we basically think about it. Right before you were born, you were like not even in existence, and then you came through your mother's meat flaps, and then you start to, your brain activity started to go switch on, and you start to have like conscious like feelings and experiences and emotions coming over you and stuff, and now you're pretty much fucking in this world and stuff like that, watching my video hopefully. And you know, it's so fucking magical, guys. It's so, everything about our world and our universe is so magical if you think about it like this. Our consciousness, basically, we were not alive, and then we came alive, and now we're having all these feelings and emotions and stuff, and we have like this like visual perception of our world and stuff, and we're hearing and seeing things. Hopefully, if you're not blind or deaf, hopefully, maybe in that case, then maybe you're not so lucky, but I don't know, and stuff like that. Maybe you were, but it's kind of fucking, maybe it's not that magical for you then, but think about it, guys. Before you were born, you already had some type of experience with death, guys. It's so fucking fascinating to me. Before you were born, like dead before born, that's the topic of this video, man. We actually experienced death twice, man. 2 times in our lives, right before we're born, and then right after we turn super fucking old and go into the grave. So we already experienced death twice, and that's so interesting, so magical and fascinating, man. So I don't think death is something to be fearful of at all, guys. I think it's like something that we already have some type of experience with death, and so we're just going to return to that state of being right before we were born. It's just going to be like a peaceful journey, basically, at the end. The destination is going to be so peaceful, basically. Like, life is a journey, and the destination is death. We're all going to go to that same destination of death in the grave. I don't think it's something to be fearful of at all, guys. I think it's something that we already have experience with. We already experienced death before we were born, and then now we're gonna turn old. We're born now, and we have these conscious feelings and emotions and experiences, and then we're gonna turn old and then into the grave again. It's like a big fat cycle, isn't it? It's like an endless cycle, man. It's like a big fat cycle, man. Nothing to be fearful of at all. It's like something you already have experience with. We all already have experience with death and dying. Before you were born, you were pretty much not even aware of anything, were you? You were pretty much already in the grave. Before you were born, like, you had no like brain activity, no consciousness, no awareness, or any of that type of stuff. So you pretty much were not even like alive. That's why death is not something to be fearful of at all, man. Because we already have some type of experience with it to begin with. Before you were born, you're pretty much you had no brain activity or conscious awareness or any of that. And so that's so fascinating that we were basically not even alive, and then we came alive, and now we're here in this world, and so on. And obviously we're gonna, in the end, like leave, and then we're gonna go into the grave, and then we're gonna die again. But you actually, if you think about this, guys, we experience death 2 times in our lives. Before we're born, and then after we die, turn old and die. So death is not, I'm not fearful of death at all, guys. I think death is not something that anybody should be afraid of at all. It's something that's like, we already have that type of experience. We already felt death to begin with, right before we were born, and then we're going to turn old, then we're going to die again, go into the grave. So it's not something that we should be fearful of at all. It's very much the case, guys, that death is just inevitable, but it's like we already have experience with death right before we're born. We already experienced dying and death right before we're born, and then we're going to turn old, and then we're going to die again. But guys, actually, if you think about this super carefully, guys, we all experience death twice, right before we're born, and then right after we turn super fucking old and go into the grave. So we all have like 2 experiences with death already. Again, right before you're born, and then right after you turn super fucking old and go into the grave. So we actually have 2 fucking experiences with death and dying. So it's not something that you should really be too fearful of or any of that type of stuff. It's actually like very peaceful, man. Think about before you were born. It was like you had that. You weren't like happy, or you couldn't experience any type of like happiness, but there's like no sadness, no depression, no like physical pain as well. So it was like kind of like it was just like a nice, peaceful like experience right before you were born, basically. You weren't able to have any type of feelings of like joy, but you weren't feeling pain anyway. as well. So it's like you're just like at peace. You had no emotions, no feelings, no fear, no suffering, nothing like that. It was like a great peacefulness to you right before you were born. It's like that's what death is. You just gotta have like that feeling of like great peace and stuff. That's why I see, I'm not really too fearful of death actually. Some people, they live their whole lives scared of dying or whatever. They live in like I actually made a lot of videos on this. They stay inside, they stay sheltered and stuff like that because they don't want to get into a road accident or any of that or something. They basically don't want to like have any issues happen to them and stuff, so they live in like a very shitty way. But actually that's because they're scared of dying. Death, that's what a lot of us are pretty much afraid of dying. But I don't see it. I'm not scared of dying at all, guys. If I was shot in the chest and I was like on the ground, I would see it. I would just be like feeling a great level of peace. Like, oh, finally it's all over. I don't have to fucking get up again tomorrow in the morning and fucking go to work or work on anything. I don't like, all that goes out the window. I'm just gonna have to like just pretty much feel that peace come over me and my eyes see blackness. I mean, some people might think that's like scary, but I don't know. I see it as like a fucking like a peaceful like end to this journey, you know what I mean? But anyway, dead before born, guys, we all have experience with death. We already experienced death to begin with right before we were born. Then we're gonna turn super fucking old and then you're gonna die again. It's not something to be fearful of at all, guys. Dead before born, guys, we all have that type of experience with death already right before you were born. What the fuck were you had zero brain activity, guys. You had nothing going through your head. You were not aware of anything or any of that. So basically you were already pretty much dead to begin with, and then you came alive, and now you gotta die again. So it's not something that you should be fearful of at all, guys. It's something that we're all going to have to come to terms with. Anyway, but dead before born, really think about this, guys. Before you were born, you had fucking no brain activity. How do we determine whether or not someone has died, perished? Is when their brain activity ceases. Before you were born, you had no brain activity, and then then you were born, and then you came alive and you had a conscious experience. But before you were born, you had no brain activity, guys. And then you became conscious and aware and stuff, and then you start to develop like your feelings and emotions and stuff. So death, you already had a type of experience with death already, and then you're gonna experience death again right before you turn super fucking old and go into the grave. So it's so fascinating. Think about it. I wonder where it all came from. A double-decker bus. Oh, it just went by. Oh shit. It's so fucking fascinating to me, guys. Death as a concept is so fascinating, but it's not something I'm very fearful of at all, because we all already were dead to begin with, and then we came alive, and then we're gonna die again. It's like we're just gonna go back to that starting point in the end. So it's kind of fascinating, man. Maybe it's like an endless cycle. It's so fascinating though. Dead before born. Before you were born, you're pretty much not fucking aware or had any type of consciousness in you. And then you came alive, and then now you have these feelings and emotions, and then you're gonna turn old and die and go in the grave again, and then it's like an endless cycle, guys. But it's not something to be afraid of at all. We already fucking experienced death to begin with, guys. It's something that we already have experiences with already. And death is like fucking, it's just like we're all gonna go back to that starting point. Think about right before you were born, pretty much not even like aware or conscious or any of that type of stuff. You're pretty much not even aware of anything or any of that. It's like you were pretty much fucking in the grave. I mean, already to begin with. Before you came out of your mother's meat flaps, you were pretty much not fucking having any type of brain activity, so you were pretty much already dead to begin with, man. So it's not even something to be really too fearful of at all. Because I think we already like all experienced death to begin with. Again, before you came out of your mother's meat flaps, you were not fucking, you had no fucking consciousness or awareness or any of that type of stuff, man. So it's like something that we already fucking experienced death to begin with. So that's kind of like fucking very interesting, man. So it's not something to be afraid of at all. I don't think so. I think it's like something that, it's not something to be afraid of at all, guys, basically. That's what I'm trying to get at in this video. Death, it's like fucking, we already experienced death to begin with, and then we're gonna turn old, die again. But we already had that prior experience to begin with, guys. So death, it's not something you should be fearful of at all. It's something that we all have experience with to begin with. We're all going to go back to that starting point. That's why I fucking don't fear death at all, guys. Once you lose your fear of death, everything becomes so easy. Making these videos outside, I don't care if someone comes and stabs me in the chest. I don't give a fuck anymore, guys. Because if that happens, I don't fucking care. I'm just gonna like, finally it's all over. I get to like fucking go to sleep now. It's like I always have that type of mindset. Certain people, they're so fucking terrified and scared of dying. That's what really cripples their ability to like function as human beings. They're so fucking scared of dying and death and all that, which is kind of dumb to me. It's dumb to me because it's fucking like we were already not we already have an experience with death to begin with. You get it? It's not something to be afraid of at all, guys. Death is like fucking, we're all gonna go back to the same starting point again. Before you were born, you were pretty much not even alive, were you? You were pretty much fucking in the grave, man. You pretty much already have that type of experience with death and dying. So it's not something to be worried about at all, guys. It's something that we're all just gonna go back to that same starting point. Nothing to be afraid of. You experience death. A lot of people think that we only experience death when we turn super fucking old and go into the grave. Actually, guys, you experience death 2 times in your life, right before you're born and then right after you turn super fucking old and go into the grave. So we have 2 experiences with death, and I think that's very fascinating, man. I don't think it's like something again to be afraid of at all. I think it's like something that's just like it's like a cycle. It's like something that's very natural as well. Can't live fucking forever. The whole world. Imagine if we didn't experience death. We would just be on this planet. It would get overpopulated and everything would turn to shit. But guys, dead before born, we already have an experience. We were already dead to begin with, and then we came alive, and then we're gonna die again, and we're probably gonna come back again in some other way. It's nothing to be afraid of, guys. I don't fear death at all now. Certain people, they live their lives in such a fucked up way. They're so shy. They have all this anxiety because they're scared of dying. Guys, it's inevitable, and plus you already have that experience with death to begin with, so it's not something to be worried about anyway. Again, guys, we experienced death 2 times, actually, not only once. Some people think that we only die when we turn super old and go into the grave. Actually, guys, before you were born, you had no brain activity, basically, so you were pretty much dead before you were born, and then you came alive, and then you're gonna die again. So actually, guys, we experienced death twice, actually. And once you think about it like that, it's so very weird and bizarre. How come we became consciously aware, and we have like this sentience now, and we have all these feelings and emotions and brain activity, but at the beginning we were fucking in the void, and then we start to come into this reality and come alive. It's so weird. It's like so magical and weird, guys. What is the true origin of consciousness and all that type of stuff? That is like such a deep fucking that's such a deep topic, guys, that I cannot even begin to like talk about properly, but it's such a fascinating topic, isn't it? The origin of consciousness and our existence and all that. Why we start to become like self-aware. While before we were born, we were pretty much in the void, and then we start to come alive and stuff and develop like all these like emotional feelings and etc. And it's such a magical thing. But how can you possibly rationalize it? It's so hard to do. But dead before born, guys, we were pretty much fucking already in the grave to begin with. Before you came out of your mother's meat flaps, you had no conscious awareness, no feelings, no emotions, no brain activity, so you pretty much were dead already, and then you came alive, and then we're gonna die again. It's like a nice little cycle, isn't it? Such a fascinating fucking it's so fascinating to me that before we were born, we were pretty much already dead, then we came alive, and then we're gonna die again. It's so fucking interesting, man. I can't even, it's so hard to piece it all together though. The origin of our consciousness and fucking all of that type of stuff, man. Where did it all come from, and why did we start to come into this world and something, get born and come alive? It's such a bizarre thing. It's so fascinating, man. So fucking weird and bizarre to me, man. The origin of consciousness and all that type of stuff. We were pretty much in the grave, and then we start to develop a consciousness and awareness, and now we're here on planet Earth and stuff, fucking living our lives. It's so fucking interesting, man. But where did it all fucking originate from? Why did we start to develop from nothing and come into existence and become consciously aware? That's so bizarre to me. Where did it all come from, guys? Why did we develop a consciousness and awareness? What's the origin of all of this? Where did it all come from, guys? So fascinating. The origin of consciousness in our feelings and emotions and our life force, all of that can never be properly explained. It's so fascinating to me, man. Damn, the wind is fucking rough here, man. Feel it coming at me. The wind, it's like someone fucking farting on you. Imagine there's like a giant farting on you. I wonder if, imagine if that's where wind comes, that's what wind is. Anyway, but imagine if that's what the actual true origin of like wind. That's like where our wind comes from. It's like a gigantic creature farting in space, and it comes at us onto planet Earth. It comes onto planet Earth and then it hits us anyway. But fucking hell, man, it's fucking, the wind is so fucking scary. Rattling all these trees, feeling shit flying around. Fucking hell. Whew, it's fucking, the wind can actually become very overwhelming sometimes, guys. It's not really a big deal though to me. I can tolerate quite a lot. I have a high tolerance for these types of environmental issues and etc. Back to the topic at hand though, guys. Dead before born. Before you were born, you were pretty much not fucking alive. You were in the grave and all that type of stuff. So you were not even born or alive to begin with. And then we become born, and then we start to develop like consciousness and an awareness. It's so fascinating, man. It's so bizarre. It's so fucking fascinating and bizarre to be, man. Dead before born. Pretty much before you were born, you were dead, not alive. And then before you were born, you were in the grave. You had no awareness, conscious experience, and then start to come alive and come out of your mother's meat flaps, and now you're alive and you have these feelings going through your head, and then you're gonna die again and back to the same starting point. We experienced death 2 times actually, not only right like when we turn super fucking old and go to the grave. Actually, we experienced death right before we're born, and then right after we turn super old and then we go to the grave. So we experienced death 2 times, guys, actually. So it's not something at all, it's something that you should be scared of at all. Fucking hell, man. So scenic, look at that, man. This little environment around that I'm in. Such a fucking intense wind. The wind is so hard, man. I fucking it's fucking hits so hard, man. The wind, it fucking blows so hard at out here. Experience with death to begin with, guys, right before we're born, and right after we turn super fucking old and go into the grave. So death, guys, it's not something you should be scared of at all. We already had that experience, guys. We already felt death to begin with, and we're just going to go back to that same starting point, and it's going to be an endless cycle, and it's so fascinating and magical. Nothing to be afraid of at all, guys. Death is such an interesting concept as well. But think about it, before you were born, you pretty much had no brain activity. Before you started forming your mother's embryo and womb, you had no brain activity. Then you start to like develop like some brain activity, and you were born, and then you came out of your mother's womb. And you're just gonna go back, then you're gonna like turn super old, and then you're gonna die, and it's just gonna go back to that same starting point again. Death is like not, we experienced death 2 times actually, not only just once, but 2 times actually. So to me, it's like, we're just gonna go back to that same starting point when we turn super fucking old and stuff like that. We're just gonna go back to the same old starting point. So it's not even something that you should be afraid of at all, guys. I 100% think so. That's not something that you should be afraid of at all. And death and stuff and dying. Again, we dead before born, we experienced death 2 times actually, not only once, not only like when you turn super old and go into the grave, but actually before you're born, you're pretty much not, you have no brain activity, so you're pretty much dead basically. That's like, I think that's how we determine whether or not someone has died, when their brain activity ceases and stuff, and that's for sure, that's when we know when someone's dead now. And in that same light, like before you're born, you have no brain activity, so you're pretty much already dead to begin with, and then you come alive and then you're gonna die again. It's like a fucking cycle, man. It's so magical that we came out of the void and we developed a consciousness and stuff, and now we're alive and we have like this conscious experience going on. Then we're going to turn old and die again, and it's just going to be an endless cycle. It's so pretty and amazing once you think about it like that, guys. So magical, man. The origin of consciousness and all that, and how we developed from nothing and came into existence, and now we're alive, and then we're going to die again, and then we're going to get out of this world and come back in, and maybe perhaps in some other way. But it's so fascinating. Death is not something to be afraid of at all, guys. It's something that's like very natural, and you already have an experience. We all already had that experience with death to begin with. Before you were born, you were pretty much not, you had no brain activity, so you were already dead to begin with, and then you came alive, and then you were gonna die again. We actually experienced death 2 times, guys, 2 times. Experienced death 2 times, right before we're born, and then right after we turn super fucking old and go into the grave. And I think really, guys, that's about it.